start our recording. And so we are just waiting for our attendees to come in the room.
All right, I will take a roll call and we'll hope Councillor Zeid will be showing up shortly. So I see Councillor McCauley, you're here.
Yes.
Councillor Preston.
Present.
Councillor Cameron.
Here.
And we are waiting on Councillor Zeid. We'll give him a few more minutes. Hopefully he'll join, but that's a quorum of the ad hoc. So tonight, I think my hope is we can give direction to Sasaki based off of today's variance hearing. So Dan, why don't you go on and get things kicked off?
Yes, good evening.
Oh, and Councillor Zeid did just join. Thank you, Councillor Zeid.
Great. So I'll go through where we're at right now after our.
Excuse me, Chair. Could it be great if people could introduce themselves just so members of the audience will know who's who here? Thank you.
Sorry, my bad. I'm Dan Dwyer. I'm an architect at Sasaki. I'm here joined with Lanying Ip, who is a principal architect at Sasaki, and Maren Bracco, who is a landscape architect and the project manager. We're just going to present where we're at right now to get direction moving forward. This comes after the variance hearing this morning, in which we were not granted the gender neutral plan layout. We're not granted a variance for that, so we're going to proceed without that. Maren, do you want to talk to this schedule slide?
Sure. So as you know, last fall we completed a concept and schematic design, and the approval for the full park was voted on then. At that time, the architecture scope was approved for 25%, which we have been continuing to develop in the last few months. The landscape team is moving forward with 75% construction documentation, and that will be 75% will be submitted later this spring and go through a review process. Right now, we are in the process of presenting to various stakeholders and getting input on the details of the landscape, and architecture is, as Councillor Sand mentioned, looking to get that approval for the 75% effort so that we can all begin to design the work together, and then looking to submit final documentation midsummer.
As you all know, the current situation that you have, there's an existing restroom with 3 toilets, and 1 sink for women, 1 toilet, 2 urinals, and 1 sink for men, a janitor's closet, and that gets supplemented with portable potties year round, which is about 400 gross square feet. The existing visitor center, seen there on the lower left, it's about just under 140 gross square feet, and is not a building that you enter, but you approach to a service window to get information. Next. This site plan marks this sort of black and white air photo marks the location, the current location of those 2 buildings right up on Merrimack Street, along that way towards that goes to the water. Next. Our current site plan, which is in development right now, keeps the visitor center restroom building in that same quadrant, as with the same general location as where the existing one is, but we're moving it over as requested closer to Summersby Way and back towards the west parking lot.
Dan, would you mind if I just jump in there for a moment?
Sure, go ahead.
So sorry, folks, I think you all probably know me, but Andy Port, Director of Planning and Development, working with Sasaki as project manager for the city on the Market Landing Park project. Again, just as context, like Dan said, the Sasaki folks have been responsive to the council's and the committee's determination as to where the building footprint should go. So you see that shown here. A couple of other things that are worth noting. As you know, the council had approved the schematic site plan recognizing that there's little tweaks that need to be done in little localized areas. So I just wanted to note a couple of things that we are doing in addition to the adjustments that have been made for the building, and we'll provide a further update on the details of the building in just a moment. Dan will. We made a couple of adjustments that were requested by the Waterfront Trust. So if you can all see my hand or my cursor here, down at the water's edge, the Waterfront Trust had requested that a couple of spaces that were originally shown as parallel to the shared use path be perpendicular to the river, so that those who are parking would be nose in facing the water. So that tweak has been made in that corner right there, just to let you know. Another tweak that we're making, and I think you'll see this on a subsequent slide on a blow up of this area here by the visitor center, is a couple of spaces being added just behind the building where we can't look at the building there, but there's ability to put a couple more parking spaces. And being responsive to concerns from the parking clerk and others, that we try to maximize what parking is remaining in available space. That seemed a suitable location to have both two charging spaces, as we've been trying to do electric vehicle charging stations, as well as two accessible spaces. So there would essentially be 4 additional spaces behind the building there. Another thing that we had added, and Dan's got it highlighted here in red, is this sort of pickup and drop off area. And that was partly to address concerns, as we talked about with some folks, stakeholders relative to large events, the staging of vehicles that deal with setup for stages, vendors and whatnot, and also bus drop offs. If there's some sort of buses coming in, dropping folks off, that they'd have a designated area for that without displacing parking. And so what was done here, as Sasaki has shown, is we've essentially widened slightly that drive aisle to allow those spaces or those vehicles to line up there without interfering with the queuing or the lane there. So that has been incorporated. One other thing I would note that isn't shown here, because it doesn't change necessarily the aesthetics or design, is a request in this grassed area here between Ferry Wharf Way and the swings to have essentially a grass area that's structured so it can support some vehicles. And that's so that some of the typical staging that happens during those activities in the waterfront can continue to happen temporarily in those limited circumstances on season, without impacting the parking lots again. So the idea there is that largely functions as park space, but as needed can support structurally vehicles that might be parked there, again, for these limited setups that need to be done. And that's something that we've been trying to coordinate with the Waterfront Trust and others. We did have a meeting on Monday with some stakeholders to talk about some of these details. So those are some tweaks. I'll also note that we're making on some changes in the Harbor Master Plaza area over here to make sure that the vehicular access is convenient. So while not shown on this particular update of the drawing, we're tweaking the turning movements in that area. So just generally, we thought it was worthwhile to note those minor adjustments to the plan that we're working on in the more refined plan set. And as Dan mentioned, our focus tonight obviously is to update you on the 25% design of the building, and per the variance hearing that we had this morning, as unfortunately that was not approved. And so what we're talking about today is where do we go from here? And obviously, like, our goal is to keep the design of the building on schedule with the park design, so there aren't delays, there aren't cost increases, and we're here to provide an update to you on that, and hopefully reach agreement with the committee and the council that Sasaki has done a 25% design here that's inappropriate for them to continue doing design work, so we can get a little more specificity. So with that, I turn it back to Dan.
Thanks, Andy. I think you've heard this before, but this is what we heard most recently. As far as where the building location goes, we're shifting the building footprint to the north and west, as I mentioned earlier, closer to the parking lot and adjacent to Summersby Way. The building orientation, we're trying to get the building as square as possible to be non-directional, but it's slightly rectangular in the sort of the north-south direction, with the short side facing Merrimack Street. As far as the program goes, we reduced the number of plumbing fixtures that we had previously, and we added an extra, a separate family restroom, which we're still showing. As far as building material goes, we're proceeding with wood clapboard siding and a wood structure, as opposed to what we looked at earlier, which was brick. We're going to maximize the use of windows to get visible transparency into the sort of the front of the visitor center, which is facing the Merrimack Street side And then there's, as we've been talking about before, the net zero goals of the building, which includes a solar array, solar panels on the roof, which we intend to make not visible. Here's a close-up of that quadrant that we're talking about. We've added those 2 electric vehicle parking spots and 2 ADA spots onto the back of the behind the building, off the parking lot. The building front aligns with the planter along Summersby Way. You can see where there's 2 trees. And we've sort of created a landscaped zone on the park side, sort of adjacent to the street, but also kind of sort of an entry point into the park there along the way that goes towards the water. And then the current layout right now, it still needs some tweaks and some dimensioning, but we've split the building into two halves, the men's and women's room. We have 2 family restrooms, and we're calling them family restrooms. They're sort of ADA, non-gender, individual use restrooms. We call them family restrooms because they're going to have changing tables in there. The building has a vestibule that keeps the space conditioned so that people going in and out of the bathrooms aren't letting cool air out or hot air out and in. The visitor center, which would be primarily a glassy front, would face sort of the park side and the Merrimack Street side. There's also a mechanical room, janitor's closet. Again, this is sort of a conceptual layout. There'll be some tweaks on some of the way it goes together. We still have to meet with our engineers for the requirements, the mechanical and electrical requirements for the net zero building. May adjust the dimension and the location of that mechanical room. But that's where we're at right now.
Dan, would you like me to speak to this? Or?
Yes, please. Yes. Thank you.
Sure. So just as again, a recap, I know some counselors have been here since the last term. Some are new. Just as a reminder where we stand per the slide that Maren spoke to earlier, the council had approved funding for design of the park and had approved design funds for the building. But there was a caveat with that, which is that the council wanted to look at the building design a little further during the 25% phase before Sasaki proceeded further. So we're at the point now, especially given that this morning we heard from the plumbing board of the state that they did not approve the variance for the gender neutral setup. We now have the layout that Dan just spoke to work within the building there, separate male, female setup and the 2 family rooms. So what we are essentially trying to convey to you today, and we're hopeful that that we can get going on the remaining design work that Sasaki needs to do to flush it out further, is we're sort of confirming here that we have moved the building footprint. We've adjusted the building materials and treatment of the exterior, the orientation of the building and so forth. And we have also been responsive both to your original request that we pursue the variance, but also that the result was that the answer was no. And so we're back to the plan that you see before you. And so our hope is that with confirmation from the council that this 25% schematic is in the same state that we saw the park wrapped up last year, that it would make sense to approve the order that's currently in committee. So the first bullet there is making a reference to the 2021 order that approved park design. And the second bullet is referring to the current in docket order that would allow or confirm for Sasaki to go further than 25% schematic design. So now if there is consensus that this plan, I think, is responsive to what the ad hoc committee and the council has requested, we'd like to keep Sasaki moving on schedule to keep the design of the facility in line with the park. Again, there's a lot of reason for doing so, including the integration of the adjacent way and the landscaping in the area around the facility. And irrespective of when these things are actually funded for construction, although we are aiming for park construction in the spring of next year, it's possible that the facility itself will be behind that schedule. And so while we're pursuing other sources of funds and it may lag behind in schedule, we do need to have shovel-ready plans, not only to make sure that the park does not have any, there's not any overlap that's problems, but also to make sure that with shovel-ready plans, that in itself makes us much more eligible for outside funding, whether that be state or funded or federal. So given the previous appropriation by the council, we'd like to make sure that Sasaki can proceed from this 25% phase on to the 75 and 100% plans that show a lot more detail that we need to make sure are ready for bid.
Thanks, Andy. So I see Matt has his hand up already, and any other counselors on the committee, let's have the questions start. Matt, if you want to unmute yourself.
There you go. Thanks, Heather. Two quick things. One, to the extent that cost. I know cost has been a interesting topic. To say the least through this whole process. And to the extent that cost ends up becoming a variable, we would like, from the Waterfront Trust, would like to encourage everyone to consider option 3. That we sent out a memo earlier today, just in terms of external access, and the thought would be that could be less costly for both construction and maintenance. And to the extent we get to the point where that becomes a variable, just want to keep that out there. As opposed to this, I think was option 2 in that original thing. So each of you should have gotten the memo from us today. So just wanted to just throw that out there, just to keep that in there to the extent that cost becomes an issue. The second one is, Andy, when you were going through the some of the redlining or boxes of stuff, it was just one thing I want to make sure that is not forgotten, and I'm not saying it is, but just make sure is, yes, thank you, is kind of where that service parking zone is. Just for clarification, remember that 2 things need to be considered. One is, the reality is because of the firehouse, we need a dumpster there. And so the location and siting of a dumpster. And then the second thing is that means access, by the trash removal truck, as well as access for deliveries of supplies to the firehouse, the restaurant, and props and things like that. So that just needs to be factored in. So that was it.
And if I could share just a response.
Sure.
Just on the dumpster area and the path of the walkway connection. Admittedly, this is not shown in this sketch, and that's because Sasaki is still working on the grading and the details in that area. But as Matt mentioned, we've been working with the Waterfront Trust and the operator of the restaurant, the firehouse, to make sure that there is actually an access there. So the dumpster area will be adjusted at an angle here for the truck to get in, and will also be a path or a connection there that'll make it convenient to do so in the future. And as Matt pointed out, it isn't shown in this sketch just yet. That's because they're fleshing out some details. We will be accommodating that to make sure that is met. And as far as the restroom piece, the one thing I would note with that is there was some prior discussion about the layout that I think Matt was referring to, which is the layout in which there's one plumbing wall in the middle, and then the bathrooms are on either side of that, with doors exiting from the outside. And part of the reason for this particular layout here that we had stuck with, given the prior ad hoc and committee and council input, was to have a vestibule space and arrival that does not require folks to go directly from the outside into the restroom, given weather conditions and so forth. So that was part of the reason for keeping the vestibule here, as you know, I think from some prior discussions.
Yeah.
It's also easier to maintain in that situation.
Thanks, Andy.
So I see Councilor Preston and Councilor Cameron in that order.
Hi, so we did indeed receive the feedback from the Waterfront Trust. Thank you. But, in sort of response to that, because I do think there's some solid arguments within it, we did discuss the possibility that, in the slow season, off season, we could have a scenario where just the 2 family rooms were available as opposed to the entirety of the restrooms. Is that correct? Yeah, sorry, in the design that's in front of us, we did discuss that there is a possibility for that.
Yeah, Councilor Preston, that's 100% correct. So the idea was, as you pointed out, was in prior discussions, was the fact that we may not want to operate this facility 100% year round, but we do want to allow the possibility of doing so based on the city's needs. So this facility is being designed so we could have that choice, winterize as necessary, And as you point out, perhaps have just during the off season, let's say, or the lighter season, have just say the family restrooms available without the need to run the rest of the facility.
Okay, and just one more question, because I truly don't remember. Was there a significant cost savings between option 3 and the option that's in front of us? Does anybody remember that detail?
Dan, I don't know if you recall any on that end.
I don't offhand.
I think it was what, maybe 100 or 200 square foot difference.
Yeah, it was a small amount of square footage. It was it's tough to it's tough to get a handle on. We haven't had full cost estimates done for anything. These are very, very preliminary rough estimates.
All right. Councilor Preston, do you have any other questions?
All set, thank you.
Councilor Cameron?
You're muted.
Ed, we can't hear you if you are speaking.
His lips are moving, but we hear nothing. He's new to Zoom.
Yeah, there is a call-in number too. If anybody's having a problem, you may be able to use that if that's the issue.
We'll let Councilor Cameron call in. Other councilors want to speak to this? Other folks on the committee? All right, I guess we'll wait for Councilor Cameron to call in. I'll put my 2 cents in while we're waiting on Councilor Cameron. Given the morning variance hearing not getting accepted, I think this is a fair compromise we've got here. I think including the 2 family restrooms and the configuration they are does give us a benefit for going forward in the winter months during the off season. So, and I think the additional parking spaces to accommodate electrical vehicles and ADA on this side, and then the service vehicles on the eastern lot makes sense too. So. Has Councilor Cameron figured out how to use the phone piece yet?
Yeah, bear with me. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my laptop.
We can hear you now. Well,
Okay,
second.
sorry about that. Yeah, it's kind of hard in light of the news about the denial of the variance request this morning. You know, to kind of
Councilor Cameron, if you have 2 devices, if you're able to mute the speaker on one of them, that may be helpful.
I understand that, Andy. That's what I'm trying to do.
Sorry.
Okay, hopefully I've done that at this point. Yeah, so I, you know, to the Waterfront Trust point, and I think there was some general agreement on that. I don't see Model 3. I would much prefer that versus what we're looking at now, which essentially is, you know, those are gendered bathrooms with a couple of family rooms thrown in there. And so, you know, we can continue to let women wait longer than men and all of that we've talked about, and not, you know, so I'm in favor of what the Waterfront Trust is proposing, and it'd be great if I could pull that up, but I don't have that handy. So I would much prefer Model 3 if it is what I recollect it as being at the last meeting.
Dan, can you pull that up?
If you hang on, Councilor Shin, I'll be happy to pull it up. So I think you'll see that option that the Waterfront Trust was referring to on the right side of the screen.
Okay. So this isn't. So each bathroom had its own sink. Is that what I remember correctly here?
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
correct, yeah. And each door would be an exterior door.
So it's not even nearly as, only 80 square foot difference. Okay. I thought it was a lot more than that. So what would the outs, so this would be a roof over these?
Yeah, I guess the idea was to sort of have, to have it where we don't necessarily perceive all those doors, the bathroom doors on the exterior of the wall. We've sort of created an overhang that may have a colonnade or some sort of screen wall in front of it, but those corridor spaces outside the doors it's exterior space. So this was just an attempt to try to, it's just an alternate layout for individual rooms, individual
possible?
bathrooms.
Instead of making it a colonnade, making it glass so that people can see in? So it would at least be enclosed?
You mean like a long lobby or something on
Right.
either side?
Right.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, it's possible.
Sure.
I'm just throwing out the idea because I mean,
Yeah.
to address Councilor Preston's question, we were discussing the whole idea of having a place to stand in the winter months. Councilor
Right.
Preston, I see your hand is up. And you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I somehow just changed my view of myself, but I can still manage. So I would like to get back to, so yeah, to be very clear, I was a strong proponent of having the ability to get in out of the weather, especially if you're waiting for bathrooms in the quote unquote slow season when it's likely colder than being just entirely outside. But my hand is up ultimately because my question comes back to cost. So yes, well, the design number 3 is, negligibly larger than design number 1. Now every restroom has a sink in it, which seems like a lot more plumbing, not to mention fixtures. So from that perspective, it would seem to me that it would be more, well, I agree that the common wall for plumbing may have some cost savings. It seems to me by having all that extra plumbing and all the extra fixtures of a sink in each bathroom seems more expensive, but I'm no architect nor contractor, so just asking the question, I guess.
Yeah, I think the middle version and the one on the right, I guess 2 and 3, we're calling them. They have the same number of fixtures, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, one has an enclosed space to access those bathrooms, and one doesn't. At least unless we were to glass it in.
I mean, the cost, to address the cost question, what we had discussed at the last meeting relative to these options, were that the middle option was about 8% more than the option on the left, and that the far right option was 2% more.
More than the middle or more than the left?
No, more than the left. So the left is the baseline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would there be an estimate for the differences in maintenance costs?
We don't have that now.
Yeah, sorry, we have not had a operation and maintenance, let's say, meeting. We're having a meeting to discuss that, but it's partly iterative based on the design preference, those sort of questions. We don't have our facilities manager here with us who oversees the crew that comes out to monitor city bathrooms.
I see Councilor Preston, your hand is still up. Do you have another question? If not, Councilor McCauley has his hand up.
Sorry, I lowered my hand. I forgot to.
Councilor, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So if we're adding costs, I went back through my notes, and if we went with the scenario on the far right, we had talked about taking 2 of these stalls off on the end,
Right.
and from a costing standpoint, which would significantly probably drop it down to closer to the size of the original design going forward. I know there's so I think that we'd probably be the same, if not less, overall. And I know that's a guesstimate based upon what we're talking about. We were concerned, and that was a suggestion, because the costs of this plus the plaza altogether are starting to climb significantly, and taking 2 of these off the end would at least knock something off, right? I mean, we're talking right now like $1,200 or $1,300 a square foot. So if we took 100 square feet off, that would be $120,000 right off the bat. And this last one on 3 gives the ability for gender neutral in all bathrooms. And again, you could close off those last 2 and keep 2 as well going forward along the way. So to me, it's frankly, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other in designs. The design that we had originally talked about, but I would be open to any cost differences to consider option 3, if that's the way we're going to call it. So thank you.
If I can,
Council Cameron, or who's?
I'm sorry, if I could just point out something, if we do take off those two of those bathrooms so that we're down to 8 fixtures, then we're actually less than the current situation. Right now you have 3 men's, 3 women's, and 3 porta potties, so that's 9 total. But
yeah, I understand that.
Really count in my mind, but
I understand that. But let me clarify: those porta potties aren't there to supplement the bathrooms because we have a need. Those porta potties are there because we haven't opened the bathrooms in 2 years because of COVID. So we have not all of a sudden said we need 12 bathrooms plus. Quite frankly, for the most part, we need what's there, which is the 3 and 3, and any event that comes in will have to we'll have to recognize to bring that up to speed with advanced porta potties. And so that was a bit of a misnomer in terms of capacity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor McCauley. Councilor Cameron, you put your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to kind of ride along with what Councilor McCauley is saying. I mean, I think Model 3 gets us to a place where those of us who were interested in the gender neutral, out of fairness and people being able to choose which bathroom they wanted to use, and parents with young children being able to access a bathroom like a family bathroom or a gender-free bathroom. And it also alleviates the concern that some citizens had expressed about having to share facilities, walking into a washroom, with somebody that they might not want to walk into. And I like the thinking about taking a couple of the these small bathrooms in Scheme 3 to reduce some of the costs. To me, bigger events are never going to be, the bathroom needs are never going to be fulfilled by this facility. That's going to be up to event planners and event organizers to provide adequate bathrooms. But I think this gets us to a much better place where everybody gets a little bit of what they want. We're all concerned about cost. And I think this, is the best of all worlds with what we're facing right now.
Yep, taking 2 off that end makes a difference. Councilor McCauley, you have your hand up still? All right.
It was an error. I apologize.
So Dan, can you and the Sasaki team go forward with taking 2 off the end and use that as the guidance from the council?
And go with
The one on the right.
the one on the right where doors open up to the outside.
And I'm sorry, Councilor Shan, is that with the assumption that there's a glass enclosure, vestibule area, so to speak, or?
Is that even possible? I mean, Lynn, you mentioned
mean,
that.
it's
I mean, anything's
possible, but
possible.
that,
I'm just wondering about the cost.
yeah, it would impact the cost, right? It would drive the cost up.
So with that, I guess we can't go down that path. So Counselor Macaulay.
Yeah, just along those lines. I would be assuming that, this coverage would be some trellis type of thing over the top to blend in with the solar panels that, would provide, a modicum of type of protection from, the sun and some of the elements. I mean, it's not indoors, but it would be, something along those lines. Is that a wrong assumption?
No, that's correct. It could be it's a whether it's sheltered from the weather. So if it was
Okay,
raining,
yeah.
for example, I mean, it could be more than a trellis. It could actually have a solid, roof covering like a canopy would, right? So it would protect you from the rain. You could wait there if it was really windy, but you would still be outdoors. It would not be conditioned space.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And this is a preliminary layout, right? I mean, we would have to develop the design and develop the expression and the three-dimensional character and appearance of it.
Okay. So thank you, Matt, for bringing this one back up. So is there further discussion amongst the committee? All right, is there any public comment to be made? I'll open it up to public. I see Jane Snow's hand.
Jane, you should be able to speak, or you're unmuted on our end, just so you know.
Jane, you're muted again. I think folks are having trouble with the audio tonight.
Yeah, Jane appears to be unmuted on our end. It might be something on her end.
All right, well, Ms. Snow, if you want to send us your comments in an email, we'll obviously take them. All right. Well, in lieu of time, I think we need to have a direction from the ad hoc committee. So where do folks want to go? Do we want to go on and vote on can we go back to the plan, the schematic, please? No, the one with the option 3 on the right.
My apologies, that's a separate document. Let me just pull that
Oh,
up.
sorry, that's all right. So I think we know what we're looking for here. So let's take a vote of the council, the ad hoc council anyway, on going forward with option number 3, removing 2 of the toilets on the end, taking it down to current numbers. Councilor Cameron, where do you stand?
I'm in favor of that approach.
Okay.
Model 3 with 2 less bathroom.
Okay. All right, Councilor Preston.
I would still prefer 1 while taking out 2 bathrooms, but I'm relatively agnostic on it now that we've lost what the majority of residents were hoping for. So I can live with 3 losing 2 bathrooms.
Okay. Councilor Macaulay.
I'm good with what you described.
All right, Counselor Zede.
I'm going to vote no, thank you.
Okay. And then I will vote for option 3, losing 2 bathrooms. All right, so 4-1. Moving forward with the giving Sasaki the opportunity to start moving forward to the 75% construction design. I think that's the next checkpoint.
Chair, do you need a motion for that because there's an order or?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
I'll make
Councilor Polly.
I'll make a motion to advise Sasaki to move to 75%.
Is there a second?
Second, Counselor.
All right, all those in favor, Counselor Preston,
Yes.
Counselor McCauley,
Yes.
Counselor Zede,
No.
Counselor Cameron,
Yes.
and Counselor Shand is also a yes. So 4-1 to move forward with the park design to 75%. With that being said, Marin, I don't want to butcher your last name, and I might have just butchered your first name. You mentioned that design status might be available this later this spring. Do you have a timeline on that now?
So we have a timeline for the landscape project
Okay.
portion. I think we'll have to reassess the architecture. We've already been assuming it's going to be delayed by at least a week or 2. So we're going to regroup tomorrow and take a look at that. And we can provide Andy an update.
Okay, thank you so much for
And you
that.
pronounced my first name right.
Okay. I got 1 out of 2. I apologize for the second.
Breako. It's
Got it.
not,
Okay.
it doesn't make grammatical sense. So it's fine.
All right, well, appreciate everyone's input tonight. Ms. Snow, I'm sorry we didn't hear from you. I would think we need to take a motion to adjourn since there's a 7 o'clock meeting that a few of us need to be going to.
So
To
moved.
adjourn.
Second.
All right, roll call. Counselor Cameron,
Yes.
Counselor Preston,
Yes.
Counselor McCauley,
Yes.
Counselor Zede.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And Counselor Shand, yes, a yes. Thank you, Sasaki. Appreciate you all meeting with us tonight.
Thank you all for the guidance and
Thank you.
direction here.
Thank you.